Afternoon. My name is Benedetto and I'm the founder of Glasgow-based design and branding agency, the LOFT, and this is LOFTcast. As part of the current situation, we're speaking to some of the top business minds in the country. We want to hear what they've done so far, how they're best preparing their organisations for what could be quite an uncertain future. And we're very, very positive people here at the LOFT, so we want to see how we could possibly turn the situation back from a negative to a positive. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to say we've got Dr Iain MacRitchie. Iain is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and the founder of the incredible MCR Pathways program, which helps disadvantaged young people fulfill their potential, overcome their challenges, and create better lives for themselves. The organisation has supported over 2,000 people thus far, and they've got intentions to grow, so I'm sure that number is going to be so much higher. It probably already is. Iain is a relentlessly positive person, so with all the negative, it's lifting a little bit, with still quite a bit of negativity and difficulties about it. It'd be great to hear Iain's thoughts on where we go from here. So Iain, firstly, once again, a huge thank you for joining us today. Before we get to sort of business, how have you been since this? How have you been?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is you feel there's two of you. We're locked down. So that is, and anyone, from a human sense that gets constrained and restricted, that really does affect you. But the other side of it is you've got to deal with it. And you've got to keep pushing ahead with what you want to achieve. So you almost feel schizophrenic, for the want of a better description, or there's two. So it's been hard, but the important thing I always keep bringing up with people is at the end of the day, some people say we're in this together. That's not strictly true. Some people have it much easier than others. We're in the same storm, but we're experiencing it in different ways. So, I'm in a privileged position that I can easily handle lockdown and still continue to operate. But, my heart and our support and charity goes out to those that can't, and are really suffering from, what is effectively now 10, 11, 12 weeks. I'm beginning to lose count of the lockdown and the number of days and weeks that we've all been in this.
It's, I couldn't agree more. I think having that, the Americans would say, an attitude of gratitude definitely helps massively. Let's go back a couple of months. So this, I don't know when this landed on, when it was on your radar. Probably in February, March, I'm guessing. But take us through the steps, what your initial thoughts were, and the steps you've taken with MCR Pathways. What were the initial big decisions, the most important steps?
Well, I think they were really, we were preparing scenarios in February to say, look, this is gaining traction. This virus could really have an impact. And one of the scenarios was that the schools would close, to try and, but I have to say I didn't expect that to happen so quickly, but at least we'd begun to prepare for it. And that gave us a little bit of a head start. So we were very quickly able to get staff the kit, to get them set up to be able to, work from home and work remotely, and also clear the buildings, because we were in a public building. We have an office in a public building, and pretty much that building was shut. Almost at the point of lockdown. So we literally had to almost take stuff and leave it in and on the street to be able to get picked up. So we took practical steps, but I think the most important one was to prepare people's mindsets for it and prepare as best you can when you're facing into uncertainty. So try and take care of the staff and just say, there's nothing we cannot overcome. We'll get through this. And immediately went very heavily into communication. So we prepared practically, but most importantly then was a communication with staff to make sure that they fully understood, what was happening, and most importantly, what we were then going to try and plan to do. Because that's the important thing I've found in any challenge, is to try and give some form of certainty, because what you face is uncertainty, and that can be the most destabilizing thing for any individual human being, far less a collection and a team.
That's super interesting. You mentioned about the level of uncertainty and the communication. Can you go into just a little bit more detail of what that consisted of? And was it different? Because obviously with MCR Pathways, there's there's the management team, there's the mentors, the coordinators, there's the young people themselves. So how's that been? It sounds like an incredible challenge.
Well, it was certainly, because if you think about, our mentoring is relationship based in school between a young person and the mentor, facilitated and supported by our member of staff in that school. Now, all of a sudden, there is no school. So there's effectively no location. And again, we are and have to rightfully respect, people's privacy, respect everything in terms of protection and making everyone feel safe. So what we had to do is effectively go and invent a brand new process. But most importantly for us is that we kept the focus in mind of the reason we exist is we need to support the young people. We can no longer do that physically in a school. We need to be able to then do it virtually and find a way that is fully compliant with all regulation, with the school governance and everything else that needed to be in place, but also made people feel comfortable. And whatever, there's three things, that when you face a crisis, certainly being very calm is the absolute prerequisite, because, you don't feel calm, because crisis brings adrenaline, a desire to do something. But that's where the counterintuitive part comes in. You have to get calmer in crisis and really deal with your adrenaline and that kind of focus. But what we did as MCR Pathways is we lost the ability to contact the young people. We lost the ability to relate to them. And we lost the ability to have our mentoring running, the talent taster program, all the things that the young people rely on to be able to find, grow, and use their talent. That's gone. So for us, it was a case of, right, be calm, be focused. We need to reach them. How do we best reach them? It needs to be virtual. We need to do that in a safe manner. It needs to be facilitated by our member of staff. So we need to find a platform and a process that will allow that to happen. But then we most importantly need to give people choice. Because again, I'm never going to presume or assume. We need to ask those young people that wanted to continue to meet and link with their mentor how best to do that, as well as ask the mentor. And what we knew is that we could not switch on virtual overnight, because there was a lot of agreement that we had to be reached. But what we did from day one is then encourage mentors and young people to exchange messages, and did it in the traditional forum of letters. Pen pal called it. Just exchange, and it can be a text message, but again, no exchange of personal data, because we couldn't do that. We couldn't share personal contact details between the young person and the mentor. So we always had to go through that process. So find a process that's really going to work and be effective, but then really go on the persuasion. We needed to persuade people to change their views as to what was possible and what was not possible. So I have to say it was a flurry of activity, but the team, to their eternal credit, kept calm and focused, and we set ourselves then milestones. So we set ourselves targets. We want to be able to, by the following day. So we had to get the kit in place. We then had to get the capability in place. We had to get the choices shared, get the messages out to young people that we're still here. Now, the good news about, dealing with young people, for them, it was like a school's out early. That's like, we're off, we're gone. So we knew we had a little bit of time. Traditionally, that's like 2 or 3 weeks, to be able to get all the infrastructure and adult agreement in place. But then that allowed us, to start the dialogue, get the choices in from the young people, from the mentors, and just gradually roll out the program with the single objective to reach them, and to reach them in a way that they wanted to engage, because it's about engagement.
It was one of the questions I was going to ask a little bit later in the conversation, but now is probably a good time to go into it. It's about any advice for leaders and managers of people. And that's what you mentioned, it was being calm and focused. I've known you for quite a while, so I know you're getting to a focus place is really important to yourself. Any advice on how you do that during this, any time, particularly during this time?
I would say again, combination of 2 or 3 things. I think you have to deal with your energy levels. You've got to almost deal with your body before you deal with your brain. So in other words, make sure that you are as relaxed as possible. Make sure if you feel a little bit of, excess energy, go on a bike, go exercise, go do something. And I had the benefit of having a bike indoors, so I would go and blast the bike for 15k. But I think, the short answer to, you have to respect the fact you're a body and you're a mind. Some people forget that that's one thing. They sort of split it off to say, I don't need to worry about my body. I'll just make sure I'm concentrated in the mind. No, one thing, take care of yourself. Your well-being is absolute. When you are confident in your well-being, then it really is about make sure that you just pause, reflect, absorb, think. In other words, give yourself time to think. And it's about the 3 time zones again. I kept very quickly from day one, this felt like a sprint because we had to sprint to get certain things in place. But when you push yourself out into a longer time frame, you realise this is not a sprint. There's no point in burning out in the first 2 or 3 weeks. This is going to be a marathon, because you could very quickly work out from the news, this virus isn't going to go away anytime soon. This is spreading out and this needs to be controlled. So I think for me, it was take care of yourself first and foremost. You cannot take care of anyone else if you haven't taken care of yourself. Do that. Take time to reflect. Reflect in 3 time zones. Reflect in the now, but reflect in what may this look like next month and what may this look like in 2 or 3 or 4 months. That forces your brain into a space of called balance. In other words, what I do now needs to fit into that medium term, or that, not even long term, because I don't think we can think that way, but just needs to fit into the different time zones. Once you've done that thinking, then it really is just about planning. It's the simple things of write it down, get back on paper, go on your PC, whatever it is, to say, this is what we would like to achieve. This is what I would like to achieve. You then share that with the team as, what we call in an MCR Pathways, a straw man. It's a framework. It's not an absolute law, that can't be changed. It's a framework. And in the event we don't come up with something better, team, we're doing that. But if we come up with something better, happy days, because it's only going to get better. So you try and get the collective engaged and involved then in your plan. As a leader, you have to take leadership. You've got to be decisive. You have to be the one that pushes ahead, that sets up the framework to then share, but get the team to buy. As I keep saying to people, I may be, an originator of a thought or an idea. I'm never going to sustain it ever unless the team buys into it, and buys into it almost with the same degree of passion and ownership as I have had in my own head, and need them to share it to the same extent. I can't force that. They have to believe it. But once you've done that and shared it, then it's a constant communication. It's constant. Because I think the thing I probably hugely underestimated in this crisis is when you lift people out of their workspaces and put them into their home spaces, even if the home spaces, have a little bit of space to breathe, it's a completely different environment. I've seen people affected in many, many different ways, just in their ability to concentrate, their ability to close things out, their ability to remain calm, their ability to take care of themselves, if they've got other relationships that they have to take care of and invest in. So again, I think I really underestimated that. I need to give people more time. I need to give them more time to absorb what's happening to themselves, as well as then to understand what we need them to do and what we need them to go on to. So I think it is get yourself in order, be decisive. The massive bit of advice I would say is do stuff. Don't get bogged down in chatting about it, talking about it endlessly, planning scenarios. Go make stuff happen. It is so much harder doing it at home and so much harder doing things remotely, but make stuff happen. But then you have to really take care of people along the way, because they will have challenges at different stages.
That's super interesting. Iain, when we spoke I've heard you speak obviously a couple of times, and you used to talk about the time zones. It was a week, a month, and a quarter. I don't know if you've got that at different time zones for different businesses, but did they have to be compressed within this situation?
Well, I'll tell you what's worked for us at MCR Pathways is actually we now have 2-week blocks. So it's 2 weeks is how we are acting and working, and that's as a management as well as the entire organisation. So, we're almost 100 staff now. in terms of organisation, spread throughout the country. So it is, is a bit of a challenge in that regard. But I tried weeks, and the weeks were too tight, months too long. So we effectively have a 2-week block that's broken into, and it's just 5 main headings, and in our case, it's about reaching the young people. So it's about reaching the young people. That's about virtual mentoring. It's then secondly, having, an engagement program, because we want them to come online with us and to meet the mentor and have the chat. But obviously we then want to have an engagement program that encourages them to keep developing themselves, keep developing on that basis. These are 2 distinct pieces of work. That led to a third, because we identified young people that couldn't get online. We couldn't either contact them, or they just didn't have the kit. And even in this day and age of 2020, what we've found is young people don't have broadband access, internet access at home, and don't have the ability in terms of or iPads to engage. Now, we were then able to take care of that, because we very quickly went to various sources to raise funds, and we then pulled together an ability that we have now to bring 300 young people online that don't have that at home. I mean, it's breathtaking when we think about it in this day and age that is the case. But that led a third project heading then to say, let's make sure everybody is included. Nobody is left behind. Everyone has the opportunity, if they want to be virtually mentored, to have an engagement program that can keep them going, because our scenarios very quickly identified that this, go back to the time zones, this would not change anytime soon. We would not be back in a school setting anytime soon. And, one of our scenarios was it isn't going to be back until December of this year, if not early part of next year. And I think some school provision will be around in August, but, it's not going to be full time. So there's still going to be times that those young people are at home. That then led to, another aspect of our program to say, we now need to just assume what we have just done is a permanent part of the product offering, a permanent part of what we provide. We want to be able to support young people both online as well as in person. So I think, that's a long answer to, the question of time zones, critical, because they help your brain think about the now, but think about the now in context of what the future may hold. And sometimes these 2 things need to be changed to be able to sit and to work together. So in our case, we found, as I said, the week was too tight because situations were changing, things were happening. And what we were trying to achieve in a week, and also with people bedding into a home working environment, sometimes they needed time out. They practically needed time out to be able to, our communication then was getting too tight. So we said, let's look at 2-week blocks. Let's talk about the month, and let's then talk about what the next 2 to 3 months may look like, and keep the scenarios for 2 or 3 months, but the actual work that we're going to do very clearly articulated in that 2 weeks. And then we have a review at the end of the first week. Are we on track? Are we not on track? And then we have a more detailed review to reset ourselves at the end of that second week. Now that rhythm has worked very well. We've now taken a situation when we were supporting just up to 2,000, just over 2,300 young people each week, and building up just prior to lockdown. We've now been able to re-engage over 1,300 of those, into the virtual mentoring platform, and others are in contact with staff. And that has been a phenomenal piece of work by the team to get to that position, because we've needed consents, approvals, kits, all the regulation that's had to be. But to be fair, I'll give, my public sector friends, local authority friends in schools huge credit, because we've cut through. We've done things in timescales that were unheard of locally. And I think that, to be fair, matches some of the national changes that government has clearly been able to do, as well as local government able to do in this situation, which is another thing I love about this. This is really hard, and I have massive, massive empathy for those that are going to be in real trouble. The good thing about this is it does show that we can respond to need. It does show that we can take care of those that need to be taken care of. So that for me is the things we now need to build on. There is no excuse. There's absolutely zero excuse for leaving anyone behind. There's zero excuse for making sure, everybody should be in the same position of being able to respond, being able to be taken care of, as well as what we hope eventually is, be determined by their potential and never their circumstances.
Oh, incredible. You'd mentioned, it's really interesting, you'd mentioned scenario planning on the way into the crisis. And one of the questions I'm most keen to hear your answer is scenario planning on the way out of this. It's basically a lot of business owners right now, if you're running a pub or travel agency or something along those lines, is how do you prepare for when you're not entirely sure what the future holds and there's still so much uncertainty? I'm guessing scenario planning is something you're doing on the exit of this as well. And what goes into your scenario planning? Can you give a little bit more detail on things that are discussed when you're doing these sort of these scenarios?
I think the key thing, and I think every organisation I've ever worked with and come across, from 5,000 to 5 people, has a continual challenge to stay focused. Continual challenge, because either it's opportunism to chase a sale or chase an opportunity that then takes you down an angle. Now that may not be a bad thing, but it starts to dilute, it starts to distract, it starts to take you away. The key thing for me in scenario planning is to go back to what is the purpose of your organisation. And if you cannot answer that in 1 or 2, maximum 3 sentences, then you've not got the right answer. The answer for me is, it can and should be a sentence. So for us in MCR Pathways, it's very straightforward. We are about engaging the young people such that they, feel confident, feel certain, and feel more hopeful of their talent and their potential. And again, no circumstances will get in the way of them realising it. So for us, in simple terms, it's about the young people. So it doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't matter, how sophisticated the systems are and that we've got this brilliance and that brilliance and campaigns here. And it's like, how do we reach the young people to give them the support? And in our case, that's mentoring. So we need to engage the young people such that they feel comfortable and secure in that mentor relationship, because that mentor relationship is the key for us. So of course, what we then need is mentors, and to be able to support them in that process. So scenario planning starts off with absolute focus. What is the focus of your organization? And believe me, every single one of the ones that I've helped, whether being direct chairman of 18 or advised over 100 throughout the world, this is the common denominator, needs to be continually questioned. What's the purpose of the organization? What is it trying to achieve? What is your focus? What does success look like? So for us as MCR Pathways, success ultimately isn't a mission statement or a vision statement. We don't want there to be any difference in the education outcomes, job choices, and life chances of our most disadvantaged young people relative to any other. Single purpose. What does that mean? How do we deliver it? Mentoring in the school system. And that's the focus. Now, when you have that absolute focus, you then do plan the scenarios against that focus, and you plan it with the reality of what's going on. So you don't sort of deny the reality of what's going on. You've got to face into it, and you've got to face into it with 3 mindsets, 3 sets of glasses, 3 lenses, whatever the best way to describe it. The first one is, what is my best case? What's my hope for the organization, what I'm doing? And then plan that. Then go to the other end of the extreme. So what is my most challenged case? What is my worst case? So you've got best and you've got worst case, if I use more negative language. And actually, how can I deliver on my purpose against those 2? And then model the bit in between. I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but believe me, it is. And it needs to be no more than 3. If it's 2, it's 2. If it's 1, it's probably wrong, because you're not going to open your mind to options. But if it starts getting into scenarios 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're never going to remember them. And as soon as you can't remember something, it becomes irrelevant. and it'll become irrelevant either quickly or in short order, or most importantly, the team won't even know what you're talking about because they sure as heck won't remember it. So scenarios for me are threefold: best case, worst case, and what do I hope is maybe the likely outcome? Because from my experience, it tends to be in between the two. Might be slightly more skewed to the, whatever side it's skewed to. And then you have to really get into your imagination. So your imagination of, what is my best case? How would it be? So in ours at the moment, our best case is, we engage all the young people before the end of June. So we get them engaged in some shape and form. We have some form of, summer program that the young people want to participate in. And, schools go back in August in Scotland, September in England, and we've got a full program back up and running with physical mentoring going on in school. So that's best case. Now, is that likely to happen in my scenario? Probably not. If I look at my worst case, we're continually trying to re-engage young people, so we don't re-engage them all. So by definition, we need to get more creative as to how we go about that. Nothing happens over the summer because, okay, schools will not go back in August. We have perhaps a form of a second lockdown, or some of our schools don't go back in August. And even those that do go back, they go back part-time. So we've still got home learning relative to school learning. So again, how do we plan on that basis? Now, we have both those scenarios thought through and considered in some quite detail. And it does mean you do the month, the couple of weeks, the month, the 3 months out, and then let me think how far that could go beyond that. And that's the basis that we go ahead on. We'll then look and adjust. If one of those, and I tend to leave the third one a little bit loose, but as time evolves, you can say, right, I'm betting it's going to be more closely aligned to my worst case, but it's not going to be quite as bad as I originally thought. Let's now nail that one down. This is what we are doing. So you push it out on that basis. Now, that's difficult to share with the team because what you do want to create and don't want to create is a lot of uncertainty around the team. So that has to be shared with the senior management. Everybody has to understand that you are considering it. But once actions drop down into my 2 weeks of blocks of things that need to be done, then that is a bit more certainty. That's a bit, guys, we need to do it. It covers off all the future options. Let's just do this. Or we need to now pull this particular piece of work because we have to plan for a delayed return to schools. So scenario planning is and does involve a smaller group of people. It is an intense piece of work, and it's a continual piece of work.
That's incredible. Can I go back just to the very beginning, what you said about purpose? Any tips for people? Because I'll be totally honest, there's times I've got about 20 different purposes for ourselves, and we've got taglines and marketing messages, and the purpose can change on a day-to-day basis. I'll be totally honest about that. And I know a lot of other companies that feel the same. We know what we do, we know what we do, we know how we do it. We're maybe not entirely certain about why we do it. From a very personal point of view, any tips for people like myself, like ourselves, that may not be that totally nailed down?
Well, I would say go on the journey. Go on the journey. You may have a lot of variety moving about because, organizations, business in particular, even against current economic backdrop, you need to do whatever it takes to get revenue. So there's a little bit of survival, comes into it. Any organization, you have to that's got to be taken care of first. So, the big thing, because I'm also been pulled in to advise on various other sort of situations, if I can give some opinions, hopefully some quality opinions. But the first base is get yourself in a survivable position. Get yourself, cash flow is going to be everything for the next, 6, 12, 18 months. So get the cash. The cash gives you the choice. We have funding, as MCR Pathways to give us a choice. So you have to get that in place. You've got to get that in place. And that does, by its very nature, means you have to be flexible. However, that is not a sustainable strategy. And it's not going to sustain you long term, and it means you're going to be continually chasing your tail. So my advice as ever is, get yourself in a position of choice, which is survival. Choice is everything. If you've got cash flow, you've got choice. If you don't have cash flow, you have no choice. Get cash flow, get headroom, get whatever it takes to protect a core of your organization. Then take the time to look at, and for me, it really is, I hate the words because some people don't like the words of what's your vision for the organization? What is your big goal? So again, to use it in MCR Pathways terms. So, our vision is, as I've said, there is an equality of education outcomes, job choices, and life chances for our most disadvantaged young people. So that's the vision. Our mission is we are going about that based on evidence and fact with mentored and mentoring relationship-based in the school system, with some talent development programs that run and sit alongside that. So vision, mission clear, the mission of how we're going to go achieve that vision, clear cut. Then the mechanics of how we do it fit within that framework. So I think every organisation should go through that process to say, what is my big hairy goal? What do I want it to be? And where do I sit in that particular equation? And then when you get back to the day-to-day planning, you have to be heading in that direction. My challenge to business, and particularly dealing with ones that have failed, is they lost the direction. So they started to go off track. And as ever, it might be a little bit of low-hanging fruit that attracted them in the first place to say, there's a bit of revenue, or there's a nice thing to do, or somebody else's idea that would then run down a particular avenue. You need to bring it back to simplicity. Business is really simple. It's really simple. You have to satisfy a customer and make profit from that relationship. So that's the whole framing of, a business. In our case, we have to help that young person transform their education outcomes, job choices, and life chances. If we don't do that, we have no reason to exist, full stop. So I think the short answer is survive first, choice second. Then it really is about get a framework that focuses you.
Okay. I think the sort of final question is, I've got a few quick questions which we'll go through at the end. I'm getting a little bit indecisive myself here. Sorry. We're going to just do the quick fire questions first. If you're one of those businesses, I think you've actually already answered this, so I'm going to leave that one. Look, I know you've done a little bit of marketing in the past. You've had a role as a sort of marketing manager. What would be your advice to marketeers? I said more than a marketing manager. I know marketing's formed quite a big part of your career. What would be your advice to sort of marketeers and in the communication at this present time?
Well, I think the first thing I would say to any marketeer or any organization is get that focus is about a need. So get to what is the need. What need does your organization fulfill? What does it satisfy? So again, using the MCR Pathways comparison, there is an increasing gap at the moment because those that are in more fortunate positions in dealing with this storm, so those in a position of privilege in the storm, are continuing to develop because they have stable family settings, they have homeschooling, they have resources. Those that are in exactly the same storm through an experience of instability, chaos at home, cannot engage in education. So that gap, as we speak, is getting greater. So the need for us is increasing each day. But the need is, we need to make sure that our young people, there is no difference. So there is no gap. So that for me is the absolute clarity of need is what I would strongly say to every business and organization is have that in the front of your mind. What is it you are satisfying? Because I will argue, I've not heard of any business actually, and even airlines, or hotels or leisure, they're in trouble, but the need is still there. So once lockdown gets opened up, the need is going to be there. So it's just about survival to that point. So my argument is this pandemic has not changed need. It'll have changed a wee bit of emphasis here. It'll have redefined it. But every organization that existed before this pandemic, if it can get through to the point of survival, is going to be required going forward. It may have to change and adjust to what is the new norm, and there might be new consumer habits and customer habits will come out. But need is the first thing to keep absolutely in mind. And then adjust to how do you change in this new normal about to be, or during the pandemic, to be able to get close to that need. So again, in MCR Pathways terms, the gap's increasing. We know mentoring works because we've got independent evidence coming out our ears now of the profound impact. So actually that isn't changing. We just need to deliver it in a different way. So we need to use technology. We need to use personal touch. We need to use everything possible to be able to support those young people when they're locked down and they're even further away from us. And if nothing else, to get a message across that we really care. The mentors really care, because that sometimes can be as profound a memory, going forward beyond a crisis, when you know somebody actually really cared and kept going that extra mile. So in communication terms, I'm comparing MCR Pathways, but just put the same thing in a business sense. The need's the same. You're around as an organisation. Communicate to your customers. Understand you may not be able to buy from me just now. Understand that we can't engage, but we're going to be here. If we see this through, we're going to be here because we want to help and support you in whatever that service is, whatever that product is. So I think need first and foremost. Absolutely think about ways and scenarios that you can deliver against that. And then communicate it to death. Make sure that everyone knows that you are going to be here and you're fighting to be here, and you'll duck and dive, because we're having to fight like everyone else. Everything has been stalled, delayed, pushed out, made much, much more difficult. But our need's clear. We've adjusted and we ain't given up. And this is where probably my last bit of advice to any marketing professional is, again, pulling out the MCR values. The MCR values are even more appropriate now than they were during our last discussion of, we need that motivation in the face of, suppression, in the face of lockdown, in the face of, instability. We need that motivation to get out of bed, burst through and look at the needs, look at my adjustment to my model and what am I going to do. The commitment then, when the motivation dies, you get tired, you get fed up, you get really annoyed with stuff can make you annoyed, is then, no, I'm committed to see this through. I'm committed to get to the other end of it and be ahead of the game. Why can't I be first? If I was second or third or fourth relative to my competition, why can't I be first? Everybody else has been impacted. Some large organisations have been put in much more trouble than some of the more nimble ones. So again, opportunity of get motivated to get the front of the queue, get committed to see it through, and then that whole resilience of, this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. So make sure you take care of yourself and you have enough of that energy. And in a collective, your team has enough energy, you've got enough cash flow to be able to see it through. But I think the MCR values, that motivation, commitment, resilience, is currency to deal with change. And it's currency to deal with change that's now imposed on us. And the thing about change, as you know, as we've talked about before, is no human being likes change. We like habit, we like certainty, we don't like change. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to contend with because we're not comfortable with. We have no choice but to change. The country has just borrowed £300 billion. The implications of how we deal with that, everything is going to change. Now, that for me is opportunity for us to do it much better and faster, because there is no resistance in, well, it's not been done that way, because those that fight change fight it in 2 or 3 ways. Never been done that way, so therefore it will never succeed in the future. Or they just don't like it and are going to bog you down in bureaucracy, red tape, reasons why not. I'm going to put my half full mindset, and that's going to be fighting the half empties that will come down the track. All that's gone. All that is diluted. Now, don't get me wrong, they'll come back. They'll pop up like weevils. I can't change it because, I can't do this because. We still get that even today, in terms of some of our partners are able to, do virtual mentoring, others, technology, and we're not sure about this. So it'll happen, but there's opportunity because this pandemic has kicked the ball straight in the roof. So it's a case of, I'm going to climb up and get it, and we're going to play a different game, and that game is going to be deal with inequalities, deal with them, because we've dealt with them, We dealt with them. I mean, that's the irony. We dealt with them at a basic level of food inequality. We were able to deal with that. We were able to deal with homelessness, actually. We were able to deal with stuff and in a very short space of time. Well, I'm saying we're absolutely going to deal with education inequalities. It's gone further back. The gap is bigger, but there's no question we have got the capability to be able to do that. There's no question we don't even need the ideas. We've already got stuff that works. So I think, the advice for organizations is, those that are the naysayers, the blockers, of which there are many, we've got a chance to really park them, persuade them, because I would like to still persuade them to come alongside, because there's no choice. This is brand new. It's very good in that respect, because we can deal with stuff that would have been almost nigh impossible to deal with. A matter of 3 or 4 months ago, we've got a fantastic opportunity to get it right for society in general, and I have to say even for the economy, because for me, those things now I think are intertwined. We've got to see economic benefit, because if we don't have economic benefit, there's nothing to spend. That's the thing, the arguments of people saying, no, this is about, social values. It is, but you need economic stuff to perform. So it has to be a new way. And the new way for me is, let's get the economy working for everybody. And I refuse to accept that that cannot be the case. So let's get the economic benefits driven hard, and let's make sure the social benefits come directly proportionate to that. And any section of society that's excluded now no longer needs to be excluded, because we can take care of the whole lot. We've just demonstrated that we can. So let's just continue to replicate it, full stop.
Fantastic.
Easy.
I know the optimism's coming from a good place. I know it's not, what's the word? It's not coming from nowhere. I know it's about rolling up your sleeves and acting on a consistent basis, on and on and on and on and on, and having that resilience. Ian, just final quick, any other companies or organisations whose response is quite impressive? You've thought that's quite a cool way of dealing with it and turning it on its head.
I would say, rather than picking out individuals, because no individual I think has knocked it out of the park, because I think we're all dealing with the immediacy of.
Yeah.
But I would say the ones that have started to communicate, because the ones that started to communicate, even if you look at some of the marketing that's going on, even you look at some of the, creative ways. So locally, if I say, because I've been locked down in Glasgow, I haven't actually been able to get back to my home in England at the moment, locked down in Glasgow. I'd say huge credit to some of my local shops, actually. Coffee Guy, I tell you what, he was shut. He's not been shut. He's been open. He's been finding all sorts of ways, to make sure, from dog snacks to all sorts of things, just to make sure he gets traffic, and even home baking, So I'd say, there's another cafe around the corner that, I'm not quite sure how they managed to get, but they did say they had it formally approved to open. So I'd say, in answer to your question, those that are communicating, those that are out there, those that are trying to, within the constraints of lockdown, within what you can and what you cannot do, and being completely respectful of that, are fighting hard. That's creativity. That's the beginnings of it. Other organisations, and I do sit on a number of groups, of third sector organisations. I think some of them have done phenomenal work, have gone from, having zero ways in which to raise funds or even to continue to perform. In fact, I know a performance organisation down in Kilmarnock, where you are actually, which is magnificent. They haven't been able to do any performances, but they're doing food distribution. They're doing all sorts of things for some local communities. So actually, rather than one knockout the park business that's performing, I would say I wouldn't place any of them in that category. What I would, as accolade, is that kind of community-based, local-based organisations that have stood up and responded to demand. Fantastic. Goes without saying, some of the beyond the call of duty stuff that our frontline health workers have done, care homes, all that goes, and that is it's heralded, and rightly so. But the individuals have just done it every day. You know, it's not just about 10 weeks of claps. They've done it every day, relentlessly. So they absolutely need massive amounts of credit. And I have to say, another creative thing is the courier companies have performed. You know, I've got, I think, relationship. In fact, some of them, I think, they've done so much deliveries that there's definitely a community attachment, a community benefit. You know, they should get credit because the banter I can now have with some of them, and I'm sure that's replicated across the community. So, community basics, some of the organisations locally, some of third sector that's come in, and absolutely, you know, sections of our public institutions have absolutely performed, no question. And I've sat in conversations with what was physically impossible before for people just to say, do it, make it happen, because they know the need is burning and it doesn't require 40 minutes of debate as to what do we do about it when we know exactly what we should do about it. The good news is we know exactly what we should do about every issue that faces this country. We know exactly. The challenge is we just need to do it. And again, take care of the naysayers and take care of those that don't want to do things, because there are a few.
Yeah. Iain, I was looking for a nice I was looking for a good positive discussion. So I think we've had that in abundance and some wonderful enthusiasm. So our best days, of course, lie ahead.
Opportunities for get to the front of the queue. So your organisation, the LOFT, get to the front of the survive, front of the queue, MCR it, focus, and you're laughing.
Fantastic. Iain, thank you very, very much. Cheers.
Right.
I'm going to take off record now and